You have less of it left than you think. Not because anything is wrong with you specifically, just because that's the actual math of being alive, and almost nobody does the math until it's uncomfortably late to start. Most people live as if time is a renewable resource, something that resets every morning, endlessly available on demand. It isn't. It's the one resource you cannot earn back, cannot borrow against, and cannot get a refund on once it's spent. And most of us spend it like it's infinite. The audit nobody wants to run. Try something uncomfortable for a second. Think about yesterday, hour by hour, honestly. Not the version you tell someone else. The real version. How many of those hours went towards something that actually mattered to you a year from now? And how many just disappeared into scrolling, waiting, half watching something you don't even remember, doing a task slowly because starting it felt harder than avoiding it? Most people run through that exercise honestly, are shocked by the gap. Not because they're lazy, because time doesn't announce itself while it's leaving. It doesn't feel like loss in the moment. Scrolling for 40 minutes doesn't feel like a decision. It feels like nothing, like a gap between two real moments. But it wasn't nothing. It was 40 minutes, permanently gone, that could have gone toward literally anything else, and you'll never get the option to spend those specific 40 minutes again. Busy is not the same as spent well. Here's a distinction worth sitting with, because it trips up a lot of genuinely hardworking people. Being busy and using your time well are not the same thing, and treating them as identical is exactly how you end up exhausted at the end of a decade with surprisingly little to show for it. You can fill every hour of a day and still waste most of it if the hours are filled with things that don't actually move you anywhere. Meetings that could have been messages, tasks that feel urgent but aren't important, busy work that exists mainly to make the day feel productive without requiring you to do the harder thing you're actually avoiding. Ask yourself honestly, which category most of your full days actually fall into. A full calendar isn't proof of a well-spent day. It's just proof of a full calendar. The two only overlap when you've been deliberate about what goes into it. And deliberateness is exactly the thing most people skip, because it's slower and less satisfying in the moment than simply reacting to whatever shows up first. The math you're avoiding, let's actually run a number, because abstract warnings about wasted time rarely land the way a real number does. Say you spend an average of 3 hours a day on something that adds nothing to your life. Not rest, not real connection, not recovery, just genuinely wasted time. 3 hours a day, over a single year, adds up to more than 1,000 hours. Over 10 years, that's more than 10,000 hours. Enough time to have gone from a complete beginner to a genuine expert in almost any serious skill you could name, multiple times over. That's not a guilt trip. It's just what the math actually says. Sitting there, cold and unemotional, whether you look at it or not. The time was always going to pass, regardless of what you did with it. The only question was ever what you traded it for. Why this feels urgent one day and invisible the next. There's a strange psychological trick time plays on almost everyone. In the moment, wasting an hour feels harmless, because 1 hour, on its own, genuinely doesn't cost you much. The damage isn't visible at the scale of a single hour. It only becomes visible at the scale of years, and by the time you're looking at years, you're not looking at a warning anymore. You're looking at a bill that's already been paid. This is exactly why people wake up at 30, or 40, or later, suddenly alarmed about time in a way they weren't at 25, even though the actual rate of time passing never changed. What changed is that enough of it finally accumulated to become visible. The lesson isn't to panic once you notice. It's to stop waiting for the moment where the accumulation becomes undeniable before you start taking the smaller, invisible version seriously, because the small version, repeated enough times, is the exact same math as the big, alarming version. It just hasn't finished compounding yet. The lie that someday tells you about time lie. A lot of wasted time hides behind a specific comforting lie, that you'll get serious about using it well later, once things settle down, once the timing's better, once you feel more ready. That lie is appealing because it lets you off the hook today without feeling like you're actually giving anything up. You're not quitting on the goal, you're just moving it, which feels completely different, even though the practical result is identical. But later isn't a real reservoir of time sitting somewhere waiting for you to come collect it. Later is just another today, when it finally arrives, with the same 24 hours and the same pull toward comfort you're feeling right now. If you're not using today well, there's no specific reason to believe the version of you showing up tomorrow will suddenly be different, unless something about the underlying pattern actually changes. The habit of postponing doesn't resolve itself by waiting. It resolves by being interrupted, on purpose, starting with whichever today you happen to be standing in. What actually protects your time? Protecting your time doesn't mean cramming more into every hour or treating rest as some kind of failure. That's a different trap, just as damaging, and it burns people out just as reliably as wasting time does. Protecting your time means being honest about what's actually worth the hours you have, and defending those hours the same way you'd defend anything else genuinely valuable to you. That starts with something simple and slightly uncomfortable: naming, specifically, where your time is currently leaking, not vaguely, specifically. Is it a particular app you open reflexively the second you're bored? Is it saying yes to obligations you don't actually want, purely to avoid an awkward conversation? Is it starting the important task late in the day, after the good hours are already gone, because starting it early would mean facing it while you still have the energy to do it properly? Once you can name the specific leak, you can actually do something about it. Vague guilt about wasting time changes nothing. A specific named leak is something you can actually plug. The version of you keeping score. There's a version of you further down the road who's going to inherit every single hour you're spending right now, whether you spent it well or let it slip past unnoticed. That version doesn't get a vote in how today goes. They just get the result of it, compounded with every other day you've already spent the same way. That should feel less like pressure and more like leverage, because it means the version of you 5 or 10 years from now is not some separate, unrelated person you don't need to think about. It's the direct, cumulative output of exactly what you do with hours like this one. You are, right now, in this exact hour, quietly voting for who that person turns out to be. Not through one dramatic decision, but through the ordinary, forgettable ones. What you open your laptop to do first, what you say yes to, what you let slide for the 10th day in a row. Nobody hands you a warning bell when an hour is about to be wasted. It doesn't come with a siren. It just passes, silently, indistinguishable in the moment from the hour that would have moved you forward instead. The comfortable excuses time wasting hides behind. Wasting time rarely announces itself honestly. It almost always shows up wearing a disguise that sounds reasonable in the moment. I'm just decompressing covers hours of mindless scrolling that leaves you more drained than when you started, not less. I work better under pressure quietly justifies pushing important work to the last possible minute, year after year, even when the actual results tell a different story. I deserve a break gets deployed after 20 minutes of real effort as if it were earned after 8 hours of it. None of those phrases are lies exactly. Decompression is real, deadlines can sharpen focus, breaks are genuinely necessary. The problem is how easily those true statements get stretched to cover behavior they were never actually describing. The test worth applying honestly is simple. Does this specific instance of rest, or pressure, or reward actually restore you or motivate you? Or is it just a comfortable phrase you've learned to reach for whenever avoidance needs a better name? Most people already know the answer the moment they ask the question sincerely. The disguise only works if you don't look at it directly. Small leaks sink the whole day. It's tempting to assume time only gets wasted in big, obvious chunks. An entire lost afternoon, a whole binge-watched evening. In practice, most wasted time leaks out in pieces too small to notice individually. The 6 minutes spent deciding what to watch instead of just starting something. The 15 minutes lost rereading the same paragraph because your attention had already wandered. The habit of checking a notification the instant it arrives, which doesn't just cost the 10 seconds of checking, it costs the several minutes it takes your focus to fully return to whatever you were doing before the interruption. None of these feel significant enough to fight individually, which is exactly why they survive completely unchallenged for years. But stacked across a single day, these small leaks routinely add up to more lost time than any single obvious binge ever does. Fixing the big, dramatic time wasters feels satisfying because the fix is visible. Fixing the small leaks is less satisfying and considerably more valuable because there are so many more of them, hiding in plain sight, disguised as nothing at all. Tonight, and starting now, don't try to fix your entire relationship with time in one sweeping resolution tonight. That kind of resolution rarely survives past the first hard day. Just pick one leak, one specific place where you already know, honestly, that time has been slipping away without your permission. Name it directly. And tomorrow, in that one specific spot, do something different, even something small. Not a total transformation, just a single hour redirected on purpose, towards something that the version of you 5 years out would actually thank you for. Because here's the part worth carrying with you after this ends. Time is the only thing you'll ever spend that you can never, under any circumstance, buy back. Every dollar lost can be earned again. Every relationship damaged can, sometimes, be repaired. Every skill left undeveloped can still be picked up later, if you're willing to put in the work. But every hour that passes is gone completely, permanently, the instant it's over. Spent well or wasted, there's no difference in how fast it leaves, only in what it leaves behind. That is not a reason to panic. It's the exact reason to stop treating the next hour as if it doesn't matter, because it's the only hour you actually have any control over. Not yesterday's, not some distant hypothetical some days. This one right now, the one you're sitting in as this ends.
Stop wasting it. Not tomorrow. Not once things settle down. Now, starting with whatever you choose to do in the next 60 seconds, because that choice is the only proof that any of this actually landed. Subscribe to Rise with Purpose for more inspiration like this.